We like to picture the American presidency as an unshakable pillar of stability. We imagine a steady hand at the wheel, a reliable guardian protecting the nation from disaster while sitting quietly in the Oval Office. But the reality of our constitutional system is far more volatile. We place authority over the nation's military, legal, and economic levers into the hands of a single human being, and human beings are incredibly flawed. History shows us that the executive branch has no built-in mechanism to filter out the deeply incompetent, the hopelessly cowardly, or the aggressively corrupt. In fact, at one point in history, the White House essentially functioned as an organized criminal enterprise, with officials openly looting the federal government like a bank robbery in broad daylight. To recognize when the republic is being dismantled from the inside out, we have to examine the specific archetypes of presidential failure. The first profile in failure is the bystander. These are leaders who simply freeze when the nation faces an existential crisis. Take James Buchanan. In 1857, the country was tearing at the seams over slavery. Instead of leading, Buchanan passed the buck entirely, celebrating the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision that denied citizenship to Black Americans. He thought a sweeping court ruling would permanently settle the issue for him. It lit a fire under the North instead. By the time he left office, 7 Southern states had seceded, and Buchanan insisted that while secession was illegal, the federal government had no actual authority to stop it. He sat in the front row and watched the country slide into a civil war. Decades later, Herbert Hoover repeated this pattern of ideological paralysis when the Great Depression hit. Unemployment soared to 25%. National banks collapsed, and businesses shuttered. But as a strict capitalist, Hoover firmly believed government intervention would only make things worse, so he sat back and let private charities handle the fallout. 15,000 desperate World War I veterans marched on Washington, demanding the bonuses they were promised. Hoover's response was to send in the U.S. Army. Federal troops used tear gas and bayonets to clear the encampment, violently assaulting the nation's own veterans. When the person in the highest office refuses to lead, strict ideology directly produces humanitarian and structural catastrophes. Next are the igniters. These presidents attempt to appease dangerous factions to keep the peace, but end up radicalizing the public instead. Millard Fillmore tried to compromise with the South by signing the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850. This law legally required everyday citizens to assist in the capture of runaway slaves. By forcing people in free states to act as slave hunters under threat of prison, Fillmore instantly radicalized normal, moderate citizens overnight. 4 years later, Franklin Pierce signed the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This reversed the Missouri Compromise, allowing new settlers to vote on whether slavery would be permitted. Predictably, pro-slavery and anti-slavery mobs flooded Kansas with rifles, triggering a 5-year bloodbath known as Bleeding Kansas. Trying to appease destructive forces doesn't preserve a union. It provides the exact fuel needed to push a divided nation into open warfare. In the modern era, failure takes a different shape. The authoritarians are leaders who use wartime paranoia to turn the federal government's immense power against their own citizens. During World War I, Woodrow Wilson signed the Espionage and Sedition Acts, making it a literal crime to criticize the government or the military. Under his watch, over 2,000 Americans, including journalists, were prosecuted simply for speaking their minds. Abroad, Wilson's severe punishments in the Treaty of Versailles sowed the seeds for World War II, while his own obsessive push for a League of Nations was flatly rejected by the U.S. Senate, who feared it would drag America into endless European conflicts. George W. Bush mirrored this blueprint after 9/11. He pushed through the Patriot Act, dramatically expanding warrantless domestic surveillance, giving the NSA power to monitor American citizens without cause. Looking at this chart, you can see the results of this overreach. An invasion of Iraq, built on faulty intelligence about weapons of mass destruction, locked the U.S. into a $1 trillion conflict that cost over 4,400 American lives and destabilized the Middle East for decades. Yet, while wielding efficient military power abroad, Bush's administration was paralyzed at home when Hurricane Katrina struck. As New Orleans flooded and thousands were left stranded on rooftops or crammed into a failing Superdome, the federal government's response was defined by delays and inefficiency. These leaders demand the public trade essential liberties in exchange for the illusion of security. In the end, they leave the nation severely restricted and completely exposed. The final profiles of failure are driven by intense vanity, petty grievances, or raw, unchecked greed. After the Civil War, Andrew Johnson deliberately sabotaged national progress. He vetoed the Civil Rights Act and issued mass pardons to tens of thousands of former Confederates. He allowed the very people who fought the United States to retake political power and lay the groundwork for the Jim Crow era. But when it comes to pure corruption, Warren G. Harding stands alone. Even Harding privately admitted he was completely unfit for the office and shouldn't have been there. His administration was defined by the Teapot Dome scandal, where his Interior Secretary secretly leased federal oil reserves in exchange for bribes. Meanwhile, his Veterans Bureau head embezzled millions of dollars meant for the care of wounded soldiers. Harding stacked his cabinet with his poker buddies and party friends, known as the Ohio Gang. They treated the highest levels of the federal government like a crime syndicate, taking kickbacks and letting bootleggers run wild during Prohibition, while Harding gambled and golfed. Without a firm moral compass, the executive branch easily becomes a vehicle for spectacular theft, permanently shattering the public's trust in their own government. When you view the collective damage of these 10 administrations, the eroded civil liberties, the gutted economies, and the fractured public trust, the strain on the American structure becomes visible. Despite these recurrent cycles of mismanagement and institutional rot, the United States survived them all. The Constitution on its own is just a piece of paper. It cannot magically filter out bad actors or stop an unfit president from taking power. The only true safeguard against a destructive executive is a fiercely educated and highly skeptical public. Democracy remains fragile. It requires unyielding vigilance from its citizens to ensure the office is occupied by those who serve the interests of the public, rather than their own vanity or greed.
Would you watch a documentary ranking every US president from best to worst? Literally, guys, this is great question. So try this my question answer, and first of all, thank you so much for watching. And literally, guys, this question is do not easy. So goodbye and take care.